Good morning, George Hepworth, Grover Park Consulting. In the next two videos, I'm going to explore a problem which was recently brought to the surface in an online, very extended online discussion on one of the Access forums. Specifically, former Access MVP Pat Hartman pointed out that SQL Server Migration Assistant for Access fails to identify and therefore fails to migrate certain indexes on fields designated as foreign keys in Access tables. If you look at the interface, you do not see them. They are there. They are identified, and I'll show you how we identified them later in this video. She referred to them as hidden indexes because of the fact that they are not visible in the index property sheet in Access. After this extended discussion, Pat provided me with an example database which illustrates the problems, and all of the examples in this video came from her original efforts to expose the problem and get the attention of Microsoft in dealing with it. SQL Server Migration Assistant for Access, or SSMA for short, does not identify these hidden indexes and therefore does not migrate them. Indexes there in the Access table does not get created in this resulting SQL Server table. There's no warning before or after the migration that the indexes exist, nor that they were ignored. In this part, we'll explore what these indexes are, how you identify them, and speculate a little bit about why they are probably created in Access and possibly why they're not created in SQL Server. In part 2, which will be a companion video, we'll explore the problem itself by using SSMA to migrate some of the tables from Pat's sample database. With that, let's dive in. I have opened up the sample database that Pat provided and opened the relationship window showing only the two tables of interest in our example here. There are many more tables, but these are the two that we need to be focused on to understand this problem. Notice that there is a one-to-many relationship between people and the blood pressure records in the blood pressure table. There's a one-to-many on the primary key person ID to the foreign key person ID in blood pressure. When we open the blood pressure table in Design View, we see the person ID, which is designated as the foreign key in the relationship we just saw. When we select the indexes for this table, we see the primary key index on the field name pressure reading ID, which is the primary key. It's called primary key. Now, let's go look at the VBA, which reveals the problem that Pat identified. This sub will list all of the indexes on a given table. In this case, we're looking at table blood pressure. It uses ADODB and the schemas for this particular table to identify the name of the table, the name of the index, whether or not that index is a primary key, and the name of the column on which that index is attached. I'm going to run it. We get back two indexes, not one. The first one, we would expect, it's the primary key. It's identified as primary key true, and it's identified correctly as being on the pressure reading ID field. The second index on this table, which is exposed in this sub, but not in the index property sheet, is called table people table blood pressure, reflecting the fact that it's on a foreign key relationship. It's not a primary key, and it is on the field, as we would expect, person ID. It is not exposed here. It is exposed here. This is what Pat identified as hidden indexes. My initial reaction to hearing about this was very much skeptical until she demonstrated with this sub that it actually is the case that this index exists. You can also identify this index by using the database documenter. The report will show both of those indexes on that table. That's the heart of the problem. This is my speculation as to why it is this way. When Access was created, the assumption probably was that if people are creating foreign key relationships, they're going to want those to be very performant, and they're going to want to index both sides of that relationship, the primary key and its corresponding foreign key. So they went ahead and created this hidden index on that foreign key field. It's not exposed here in the interface for whatever reason, I don't know, but the fact of the matter is that it does exist. It's attached to that table, and most of the time the average Access developer is probably not going to be aware of it. I certainly wasn't aware of it up until this point. I can further speculate that it doesn't get migrated to SQL Server because by default SQL Server does not create indexes on foreign key fields, on fields that have a foreign key constraint on them. You can add them, of course, in SQL Server just like you do here, but they're not created by default. And I think the creators of SSMA probably followed that paradigm rather than the Access paradigm. Pure speculation, I don't know. We'll examine that in the second video and offer some of our conclusions and recommendations at the end of the second video. If you like what you saw, please hit the like button. Tell me that you like it. Give me that positive feedback. Subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.